Okay, there we go. We are here in the Adventurer's Tower, so we're going to now do the reading of the second Globe chapter. I've had trouble writing the third. Basby and I have been working hard on it. Basby especially has done an awful lot of work getting the material together. But I've had writer's block. I've been emotionally invested in other things, and creation it requires full focus. So maybe after I read this lovely second chapter with Detonate and Pop Brooks, then maybe I'll get my spark back and be able to write the exciting third one. So let's give it a try and see if my allergies will let my voice do the trick as well. Gosh, my scratchy throat. Ugh. Okay, there we go. Let's see. This will be good because I have not read this since I wrote it. So, all right, chapter 2. The fair weather continued after that. The ocean seemed endless. They saw no sign of rock or shore, no twig of vegetation, and the familiar bird's cry was absent. Though there were no real obstacles, the environment was alien to the crew. They were not beset by battle or weather, political or navigational challenges, and the scene did not change one day from the next. The men began to be uneasy with the still, unchanging nature of their new reality. On board the ship were its captain, Dude Man, his first mate, Kleinevac, chief engineer, DGT, shipmaster Shimmeluk, lieutenants Grubel and Detonate at the guns, and the good lad Cheshire at the helm. These, along with the deckhands, constituted the formal crew, the real airmen, most of them with military background. The non-enlisted crew members, or passengers, as the just mentioned group referred to them, spent their days talking or reading, sometimes helping the crew with their duties in maintaining the ship, or just walking on deck and looking over the side. Although there was, as we said, not much to look at, it had not been in some time. It was one of these moments when a passenger was out lollygagging on deck near a crewman hard at work that a scuffle broke out. In retrospect, it was so much more than a scuffle, but too late to change that. Crewman Detonate was replacing the charges in the ship's side cannons, a laborious chore and one that required focus. He made many trips from the hold to the battery, swapping out expired powder and checking that all the components were dry, while a passenger was idling against the rail. At one of these times, when Detonate was carrying a heavy box past him, he rammed the box right into the other's back, nearly knocking him over the railing. Sorry, mate, he said with boredom. Oh, sorry, mate, he said with boredom in his tone as he didn't even stop walking. The victim of his cruel prank was wearing a safety harness and line, but was startled. You almost knocked me off the ship, Poprooks exclaimed. What are you trying to do, kill me? Detonate turned only slightly while continuing to walk away. Seems like you've been enjoying flying on the ship. Thought you might like... Seems like you've been enjoying flying on the ship. Oh yeah, thought you might like to try it yourself. Any vulnerability Poprooks may have felt a moment before disappeared instantly. Put that down and say that to my face, he yelled out in challenge. Lieutenant Detonate stopped. He turned slowly with a sigh, but didn't put down his box. You're a civilian, he said with annoyance. Are you enjoying your cruise, Getting your money's worth? I'm paid to be here the same as you, Poprooks said in a cool tone. I'm here to help. Oh, see, I said that wrong. I said it heatedly when he said it in a cool tone. I didn't quite say like that. Anyway. Well, I don't want your help, kid. You're too young, and I knew you weren't right the moment I saw you step onto the ship. He paused for a moment. You're from Scythia, aren't you? Silence followed. Detonate held his ground and his box. Poprooks didn't take a step and was perfectly still. His eyes didn't leave his accuser. Put down the box, Poprooks said quietly. Detonate smiled. So you are, then. I don't need to do anything for the likes of you. You're just a dirty untouchable. Detonate started walking away, but there was no walking away for the young Scythian. Poprooks chased after him, yelling, You stop and fight me like a man, or I'll throw you and that box overboard. Detonate appeared not to notice him. He kept walking normally as Poprooks closed in on him. Then, just as Poprooks got close, he set the box on top of a barrel and spun around quickly to his right, a curved dagger suddenly in his right hand. He must have had it lying on top of the box. He slashed out with the dagger as he spun around, his trajectory aimed for the face. Poprix was not expecting so sudden a turn, or for his opponent to be armed. His reflexes saved him. As the dagger came spinning around at his head, he lowered himself into a quick split on the deck, the dagger's blade passing just an inch over his eyes as he threw his head back. Surprise flashed across Detonate's face as his momentum carried him along the path of his spin. He tried to go with it, shifting his weight to his right foot in preparation to bring his left leg into an attack. Poprix acted faster, though, and still doing the splits on the deck, he knocked Detonate's weak left leg out from under him with his right arm, while he brought his left fist up straight into his crotch. The result was that Detonate lost his footing and fell forward over Poprix's outstretched body. He landed with a broken face and smashed balls, and Pop was up and on him in an instant, twisting his arm behind his back and wrenching the knife out of his hand. "Don't you ever call me that again," he yelled. "Don't you ever say it, or on the life of a mother I never had, I'll make you wish you'd fallen overboard." He kept twisting his prisoner's arm as he spoke, and Detonate cried out in pain through a mouthful of blood. To torture a prisoner is wrong, and we won't say it isn't, but we should at least understand what Poprix was feeling. His heart was pounding with rage, his veins were coursing with the adrenaline from the scuffle, and he had a heart that was born broken. He might have gone too far in the next moments, perhaps, and done something he couldn't quite ask forgiveness for, had not the clear tone of authority rang out at that exact moment. "Poprix!" It was the commanding voice of Klein, and its single word snapped Poprix out of his daze immediately. He looked up to see her striding towards him, her boots clanking strong on the deck with each step. I love my single most favorite thing of this entire storyline is the commanding presence that Klein has when she walks on deck. I don't know if the writing it shows through to you guys, but in my mind, it's like Darth Vader's breath, like it's iconic. The bloodlust faded from his eyes as he stood and saluted with ease, backing away from the still form of Detonate. Sergeant Kleinevac stopped a step away from the downed crewman. "Get up, Lieutenant," she ordered. Detonate did not move at first. He moaned. He rolled to his side first, then slowly, painfully, he stood up to face Klein, his mouth still red with blood. "Can you walk?" she asked matter-of-factly. "Yes, sir," he mumbled. "Report to Miss Lovely in the infirmary. You're to stay there until she says otherwise. When she does, you are to report directly to me. No mess, no bunk, until you have given me your account of what happened. Do you understand, soldier?" "Yes, sir." Klein dismissed him with a turn of her head, and he walked awkwardly towards the hold. She looked at Pop then, who hadn't moved at all during the exchange. His anger had faded, and under Klein's gaze he now felt small, and that he was in the wrong. A small crowd had gathered. Shimiluk and Cheshire had both been on deck and called for Klein when they saw what was happening. Grubel had come over to see what was happening, but was now helping Detonate to the infirmary. Klein cleared her throat. That was all that was needed, and everyone turned away. Poprix was alone with her now. He didn't say anything, and neither did she. Inside, he was in turmoil. He hated to be mistreated, and the personal slur had ignited his heart's fire and caused old wounds to burn. He hurt inside from this, and his pain urged him to rise up in his defense and blame Detonate, but he also saw the look in Klein's eyes, the look of absolute disapproval. His feelings churned within himself, anger, guilt, and now loneliness, all at the same time, as he feared he had let down the one person he respected. His heart gave in to despair. Oh, my soul aches for young Poprix in this moment. "Don't cry," Klein said. It wasn't gentle, exactly, but her tone was something like smooth stone instead of rough stone. Poprix didn't say anything. "One mistake doesn't determine who you are," she said, "but you must still admit the mistake in order to move on. Let me know when you're ready to talk." She turned and walked away, leaving him alone. Poprix was now alone on the deck, what he feared the most, but pretended not to fear. He wished that he was the one being escorted to the infirmary by a friend. Though he won the match handily, he was envious of Detonate. Meanwhile, in the infirmary, Detonate was getting a reprimanding of his own. "Causing more trouble again, Miss Lovely," said Miss Lovely as she fetched some clean water. "Rinse," she instructed, and handed him a cup. He obeyed, swishing the fluid and spitting out a frothy red mess. Had your ego hurt too bad, asked Grubel with amusement. I didn't see what happened, but when I got there it looked like that little orphan had you right where he wanted you. I'm lucky to be alive, answered Detonate, speaking for the first time through puffed lips, even though I had a knife in my hand. He jumped as pain suddenly shot through the side of his face. Someone had slapped him. He looked at Grubel first, his eyes lighting again with anger, but the surprised look and pointing eyes on his best mate's face caused him to turn. It was Miss Lovely who had slapped him. Don't tell me you actually meant to cause that poor boy harm, her tone cut sharply. Even though the guilt was rising up in him, Detonate fired back just as sharply. I already said I'm lucky he didn't do to me what I tried to do to him, didn't I? What more do you want? I want you to not be trying to kill your own crew, she replied. That goes for me too, Grubel added, without the sharpness. Detonate denied any other injuries. He went straight to Seekline, where he stood still, at attention, for 10 minutes while she flailed him up and down with her words. Then he returned to his post to finish remounting the gun. It was slow work. His mouth hurt, his balls ached, and he was distracted, and kept getting his hands stuck in the gears or dropping the heavy tools on his foot. The sun had set by the time he had finished, and he had missed evening mess. Everyone else was turning into bed except for the lookouts. He was tired and sore, but he snuck into the kitchen and found a flagon of ship's whiskey. Drink first, he thought, then his bunk. He stepped outside to avoid contact with anyone that might still be up and about. The sky was dark and the wind was soft as he attached his safety line and limped his way to lean at the rail. He stood there for quite a while, building barriers around his feelings with the alcohol, until he glanced to his left and noticed he was not alone. A little down below, lower on the mid-deck, he could make out the outline of a person against the mass. He made his way down the stairs and came closer to see who it was. He was quite close when he realized by the size of the shape that it could only be one person on ship, Pop Rooks. He was sitting on a barrel. There was a group of them tied around the mast. Detonate didn't move. Pop Rooks didn't move either, and after a time he realized that Pop was probably waiting to see if he would attack again. Detonate looked at the alcohol in his hand, swore, then with a careless gesture he tossed it overboard. Oh, littering! I didn't even think of that. Shame on me. He decided to speak first. I'm sorry for what I said to you today. I was angry at something else. I had no right to take it out on you. He stood still while he waited, but Pop said nothing. At length he tried a different tactic. Thank you for not killing me, he smiled in the dark. A moment passed. You're welcome. Detonate let out a chuckle. That was a beautiful move there. I've never seen anything like it. There was more silence before Pop Rooks spoke again. What are you angry about? He asked. Now it was Detonate's turn to be silent. He turned his head downward and thought to himself, working his tongue around the sore spots of his mouth while he did so. You really want to know? Sure. Pop Rooks' tone was that of disinterest. Detonate decided nothing ventured, nothing gained, so he proceeded to tell his story. I grew up in Uniontown, he said. Good place, had a good family. I joined the Navy at 16 and worked as a powder rat. Good years, those. I had to work my way from the bottom up, but I had the knack for it. I was promoted and Grubel and I manned a heavy gun together when the fighting started. We manned that gun through 16 battles, him and I, 6 of them direct engagements with other heavy cruisers. We were the most decorated ship in the fleet. Big man, Pop Rooks said, standing behind your armored bulwarks while the regular folk run into thin-walled buildings below, trying to find protection from the blast and scorching timbers that fall down on them from the sky. Pop Rooks had been looking out over the deck this whole time, but in the shadows he turned to face him now. Detonate could not see his expression in the dark, but he could feel the contempt in his voice. I hope you enjoyed your pretty little war, Pop Rooks finished. You're right, Detonate said haltingly. I loved it. I wanted to go to war, to prove myself, make my family proud. He choked on those last words as he said them. He turned and started walking away. He stopped before he mounted the stairs as if to speak again. then shook his head and wordlessly kept going. He made his way to his bunk, limping through the narrow slots between the cots stacked 3 high with snoring crewmen before climbing into his own marked spot. Despite his fatigue and pain, he hardly slept that night. He stayed long awake thinking about his conversation with Pop Brooks and rehearsing his lecture from Klein over and over in his head. "I don't think less of you," she had said, pacing left and right in front of him in her office, while he had said nothing and stood at attention. "I want you to know that, Detonate, but you have to face facts. You were court-martialed and dishonorably discharged. You were a decorated soldier, your hit ratio's the highest in naval history, and that's why I wanted you for this mission. The captain protested. It was only Grubel speaking up for you that gave you this chance, but that's all beside the point." She stopped her pacing. "You have a deep hurt, and you need to face it. Face it and deal with it before you can't do anything else but act out of it. I'm not speaking to you as a soldier, Detonate. I'm speaking to you as a human being. You can't keep pretending the past didn't happen. Look at what it's doing to you." Klein's eyes grew wet a little as some of her own regrets started to get triggered. She paused to collect herself, then spoke as deliberately as she could. "If you keep taking the easy way out, if you keep refusing to look at yourself, one day you will be gone, consumed by these feelings you didn't address, and all that's left will be an empty husk of guilt, covered by a mask of hatred." The end of Chapter 2, A Cargo of Torn Hearts. So this chapter was hard to write. I was very nervous as I wrote it. I spoke to Rudy about it. I spoke to Detonate. Because while all the characters in the story have emotional elements, Klein has survivor's guilt. Pop Brooks, we'll get more into his story later, but he's an orphan with a chip on his shoulder with his own tragic, story living on the streets. But Detonate's character, it just came out this way, unique, as someone with intense guilt. And I haven't written down yet why he feels so guilty and what his dark secret that hurts him is. That won't even come out in Chapter 3, it'll come out later. But I was very nervous to write a character that has so much hurt and is making bad choices. But in the end, that's also life. We get hurt and we make bad choices. And in this scene, Klein is trying to talk to him, trying to tell him, you need to get help. You need to figure this out before you drink yourself to death, basically. Or before you act so much out of hatred, that you kill people who could be your friends. And later on, we will find that his Detonate's feelings are very understandable. His story will be very compelling. But for the moment, I worry that we'll judge him too harshly. Also we need to remember, like back when he pulled the knife on Pop Brooks, I forget where that is, but we have to remember that this book is set in a post-war setting where Detonate has had to fight for his life. So to him, it wasn't a low move. He's a veteran. He's like Rambo. This is not a surprise attack. Is not a matter of morality to him. It's a matter of survival. So it's a different setting, than if this happened in a more peaceful setting. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm going to try to work on Chapter 3. So I hope you guys can enjoy it and hope I can actually get it out to you. So thanks very much for watching and listening.